first step with investing is knowing what you can afford to buy. So there's two things to that. What can you afford to borrow and what can you afford to hold? So on my website, I have a little investment forecasting tool that I use personally. It shows you if you bought a property worth 500,000 and a rental yield of 5%, how many properties can you afford to hold at the end of the day?
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show to help you unlock your full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life you really want. Let's get started. Hi, freedom fighters. What challenges are you facing as you enter the property market or try and secure your next property? Have you been asking yourself, where do I start? Who do I trust? What can I afford? What approach and choices will lead me to achieve my goals in the safest, easiest, and most affordable way? If this all sounds familiar, then you're not alone, and you're in the right place to overcome your fears and concerns. Because in today's episode of your Property Hub's Get Invested, we continue our special Grassroots Investor Series, talking to hands-on investors who share their trials and tribulations and how they've managed to overcome them in order to achieve their lifestyle goals by investing in property. And while we're talking about this actual investor experience approach, if you or someone you know wants to share your unique property journey for the benefit of others here on Get Invested, just reach out to me personally at bushy@knowhowproperty.com.au. Now, as I stress repeatedly here on the show, property is a game of finance and an elite team sport where you're not a player, but the owner of your independent professional team. And your key role is to manage your managers and ensure that they're all playing to your game strategy with your best interests in mind at all times. Unfortunately, however, when it comes to the critical importance of your finance structure and strategy to help you optimize your capacity while minimizing your cost and risk, there's a lot of difficult to deal with and below average performing banks and brokers amongst over 40 lenders, 2,000 different loan solutions, and nearly 11,000 mortgage brokers. This critical finance importance, yet poor underperformance, is the reason why I actually became an investment savvy finance broker many years ago. And it's the same reason why today's special guest investor, Andy Fernandes, has done the same. Like me, Andy's a borderless investor who has built a property portfolio across the country and has transitioned to finance broking to overcome the multitude of lending hurdles in order to help you to better finance your property purchases and to guide you through the entire property finance process. As you're going to hear, we've got a lot in common. So I know we're going to enjoy a great conversation today. So welcome and let's get invested, Andy.
Hi, Bushy. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
It's great to be rubbing shoulders with both an investor and a finance broker, Andy. And you've been very generous in coming on. And while we're talking about it, I want to thank PK Gupta for introducing you. I've got a lot of time for PK. He's a really good operator in his own right, and any friend of PK's is a friend of mine, Andy. So welcome aboard. And mate, to sort of kick things off, Andy, I'd love for you to start talking to us about what you do differently and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Yeah, so you could get finance from a bank and go out and buy a property, but then what's your long-term goal? What's the end goal, and how are you going to get there? So at On Fire Finance, I try and help budding investors or people who have invested for a while, but if they're looking to scale their investment portfolio, I help them with a bit of a plan and a bit of a strategy on how to get to their end goal. So it's not just about the next property, but it's how that next loan, how that next property fits into the overall end goal. So that's what we try and do here at On Fire Finance.
Yeah, I love it. It's starting with the end in mind, as I often talk about. There's a lot of Australians who just don't take the time to think about exactly how they want to live and then work out how they're going to fund that lifestyle. I love the fact that you're, the finance, if you like, is the oil that lubricates the transaction. But unless you know where you're going, you could end up anywhere. So sort of starting with that approach of getting some clarity around what that looks like, and then giving them the tools to do that, and then structuring the finance to help that is a quite a rare commodity in the industry, Andy. So love the fact that you're doing that. Sort of looking at where you are now and where you started, I'd love for you to take us back over your life journey so far and talk to us about where you've invested your time, your energy, and your money over the years, and why, and how this has led you to what you're now doing.
Yeah, so over the years, I've found that the most useful thing has been for me to invest in my own education. And I mean, I hate to rephrase Joe Hockey here, but getting a good job and earning good income, as bad as it sounds, it is important, to buy properties. You need an income.
Yep.
And I've not only income, it's also just educating yourself. That's the main thing I've found, whether it be upskilling yourself in your employment or just learning about property. It can be, through forums, books. There's so many ways you can educate yourself and make a start. That's the important thing, to actually make a start after all of that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Now, I know from some of the background work that you were an accountant that transitioned to become a finance broker. What was it that led you to be an accountant, firstly, and then what was then the reason for making that change from accounting to finance broking?
It's actually a funny story, because my growing up in an Indian family, in an Indian household, my mom, she encouraged me towards accounting, the stereotypical role, because she just said, oh, it's a safe job. You won't have to deal with too many people. You can just do your work and, you can sort of get by. And it was all right at the start. I did it and I got good at it, and I completed my CPA qualification. But at the end of it, I just found myself much more interested in investing. And in accounting, I could, I did all these profit and loss statements and financials for the company, but I couldn't see the end result of the impact it had on people's lives. And I think working as a mortgage broker, I can just see, I helped a 60-year-old person buy his home after his divorce. And that was such a good feeling that, this person has somewhere to live, or helping people with their investment portfolios when they didn't have a plan or didn't think they could really achieve anything. So that really drives me, So work is not just work. It's kind of, you do what you love every day. So yeah, that's the reason for me to transition.
Yeah, I love that. It is, to sort of move into accounting and to finance broking to some degree, you've got to have some sort of a comfort or passion for numbers. Was that something that just came naturally to you from very early years, and therefore it was a natural thing to go down that road? And in conjunction with that, what was your early relationship with money, and how has that influenced how you've approached life since?
Yeah, I've always been someone who would analyze things. I mean, I think my wife actually caught me in the cereal aisle, examining two different cereals and checking out which one had more protein in it and which one had more carbs. And she was actually watching me for 20 minutes to try and decide. So yeah, analysis has always been something I've kind of enjoyed doing. But at the same time, I feel like it's important, that's why, to have a bit of a system that also stops you from overanalyzing. So that's what I learned later on in my property journey. In terms of how I started, my relationship with money, I've I wouldn't say frugal, but I've been wise with saving. I've always been a saver. I remember back in primary school, I would get a couple of dollars every day for my lunch, and I actually saved it up and I bought my grandmother a gold chain. So I've always been a bit of a saver. So that's kind of helped. But I feel like it's something you can't force on yourself, like a diet. If you try too hard to do like a temporary saving, then you're just gonna end up blowing it up eventually. So it needs to be a bit of a lifestyle too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Tell us, if you look back on your life so far, what's something unique or interesting about you that you've never really said in public before?
I'm actually a West Coast swing dancer. I've been doing partner dancing. It's called West Coast Swing. I've been doing it for over 10 years. And I actually met my wife at West Coast Swing dance class. So there's something for those looking to meet others and learn a dance style.
I love it. The West Coast swing. Just put some
Yes.
color around that. I'm not. I've heard of swing, but not West Coast swing. What's
So
the
it's
difference?
it's the west coast of America, but you dance. It's a partner dance, but you do it to a lot of modern music, a lot of R&B, and anything you hear on the radio these days. So it's not the traditional bouncy kind of swing dancing. It's very modern, and it's quite fun to good community, good place to meet people rather than just going out and getting drunk, trying to meet people kind of thing. And yeah,
Love
great
it.
thing to do.
Are you still doing it?
Now that we have a 2-year-old baby, it's a bit hard to make time, but we do work around every now and then, and we each take turn and try and go and get a bit of dancing. Yeah.
Love it. There's something about dancing that it's a joy for the soul, I reckon. I don't do it often enough, but if I'm in a funk, I'll often put on some of my favorite music and dance around like an idiot in the kitchen, and only do it for a few minutes, and I feel instantly better. It
Yeah, and
just
I
puts a
think
smile on the inside.
it's just also, connecting with other people with partner dancing, but also remembering different dance moves. And it really, it's an exercise for your mind and body, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, if you sort of look back over your life so far, Andy, what sort of challenging event in your life do you think has brought about your greatest learnings and best changes?
I think the learning or the biggest event that led me to where I am today is back in 2015 when me and my then fiance, we were looking to buy a home in Sydney. And in 2015, the property prices in Sydney were just going sky high, and it was a crazy time to be, as is now, but at that time it was kind of the peak of the boom, and we were looking for a long time, unable to really afford anything. In the end, we got a pre-approval for around 1.25 million. At that time, it was a lot for us to afford. I'm pretty sure even to this day, it's a big amount to spend on a home. And we were all happy to be buying our home in Sydney. And when we saw the mortgage broker, I asked him, what's interest only? And he just vaguely brushed it aside and said that, oh, it's just something investors do to accumulate investment properties, and they think they're getting ahead. And I was just curious. I was like, oh, I need to look into this a bit more. What exactly is it? And then I didn't think much about it, but I went away to a meditation camp for 10 days. It's a place where you just meditate and don't talk to anyone or whatever. It was a great experience, but I came back with a bit of clarity. And I thought, we're getting this massive loan that we can't afford. We can't do it. We can't afford this. And so I started looking online a bit dejected, like, what else can we do? And I came across a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. Now it's a really old little book that you can find online. And it's about some fables that talk about, timeless money concepts of saving, spending less than you earn, saving the rest, and investing it in something that makes more money. And if you do it well enough, other people will give you their money to go and invest, make more money for them. So like banks. So I found that really eye-opening for me, and I thought that maybe there's a better way. Maybe we can invest a bit and buy something a little bit cheaper to live in, and sort of invest the rest. I feel like that was a changing moment, a pivotal moment for me. And then I started educating myself by learning on different property forums, speaking to different investors. It's been a bit of a journey, but I've just dived, headfirst into it. And I would like to share what I've learned with others so that they don't make the mistakes that many can make. Because, Bushi, there's a lot of information available online. And in this day and age, it's easy to, it's an expensive decision to buy a property, a 30-year loan. So you want to get it as right as you can. Yeah.
100% agree. Before I get you to unpack your journey in a bit more detail around the property side, you mentioned meditation earlier and doing a meditation retreat. How beneficial has meditation been to your life in general? I'd say that giving yourself time to have that reflection, to really think about that $1.25 million home loan is exactly going, no, that doesn't feel right to me. Just making the space to allow yourself that thinking and feeling time. How as important has it been, not only to that property exercise, but to your life generally?
Yeah, I think everyone knows, with all the media easily available at every minute, we are blasted with some or the other media. Taking that 20 days off, 10 days off in a meditation camp, really getting back to yourself, your own mind, and, clearing out the clutter that's there. It really helps. Some sort of meditation every day. It can just be going to the gym, but I feel like it really helps put the focus on what's important to you. And while it may sound like, buying investment properties is sort of chasing money, and that's kind of far from the whole meditation lifestyle, but in reality, we are trying to make time for ourselves. So that's the biggest thing that, that we can have, biggest asset that we can have. So trying to buy investment properties so you don't have to work well into your 70s and 80s in a job that you don't enjoy doing. That's what it's about for me. That's what the investment journey is about. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Now, let's sort of dive full bore into your property journey. Then you've talked about your switch from, no, we won't put a massive noose around our neck with a dirty great home loan and then be on the treadmill for the next 20 years. But I'd love to sort of get your thoughts around what were your initial fears and feelings of concern about investing in property before you decided to invest, and what helped you overcome this and any other obstacles before you got into it?
Yeah, I mean, as many people would have heard, that Sydney always goes up. And, Sydney is a safe property market. Everywhere else around Australia doesn't do anything, that kind of a thing. So going out, when I started in 2017, when I decided to buy investment properties, I'd saved up a bit of money, but obviously not enough to buy investment properties in Sydney. So I had to look elsewhere. And I thought, what being an accountant and a finance person, I was aware of my own finances. So I knew the kind of rental yield that I need to hold a property. So it's not just about buying a negative yield property and living on, 2-minute noodles. So I wanted something that at least looked after itself. So I decided, after learning a lot online and from different people, I looked at Queensland and I looked at some of the properties in Brisbane. I was like, oh, okay, well, these properties are so much cheaper and the rental yields are much higher. But then back then there was talk about how it always floods there. There's always an excuse not to invest. And then family, as much as they care about you, they can hold you back sometimes. So my mom was like, oh, you should buy this apartment in Marylands. You'll do so well. So we actually went out and looked at properties in Marylands and Western Sydney for properties that cost about $400,000, 2-bedroom apartments. But I wanted to buy something with a bit of land in it. I didn't want to buy a 2-bedroom generic apartment when there was 10 other apartment buildings around here. And I thought, like, I don't know if this will do any good. So I went against those beliefs and I decided to just take a stab at it. And I bought a property in Crestmead for $300,000, a 600 square meter block, 4-bedroom house. And I didn't buy the apartment, but between 2017 and 19, that property actually started to go down in value. And it was actually initially hard to rent out. And I really kicked myself. I was like, did I do the right thing? Did I make a mistake? But you never know, because it's a long-term game. It's not necessarily the first 2 years. So since then, those properties, if you look at them now, properties in Crestmead are over 500,000. So I actually I made a good buy in the end, while two-bedroom apartments in Maryland, they're still around the 400, 450 mark. So if I had to buy that, I would be on a 4% yield, while interest rates are now around 5.5, 6%, and it would not be a good time. While the rents in Crestmead have gone up, my yield is around 7% now, so it's pretty much paying for itself. It's gone up in value by 200,000. So it was a bit of not listening to people who haven't done it, but doing your own research and learning from people who have done what you're looking to achieve. So that was my first lesson there. Yeah,
it's a really good one, because most people, and again, there's a lot of pre-investors or first-time investors who have, as you say, Sydney always goes up. There's this perception that property values are going to always go up, but I guess I'm old and crusty enough to know that there's a bit of an S-curve process with most areas, where you'll see it go up, and then it'll actually come back 5 or 10%, and then often flatline for a period before it goes through a next growth spurt. The key thing that I'm hearing there is that, while the property values going back was a bit of a shock, you didn't react and then sell the property, which first time investors, over 50% of them sell their property within the first 5 years, and a lot of it's because their expectations are wrong around what's likely to happen with property and haven't structured themselves well. What gave you the courage to go, well, okay, yes, the values are coming back a bit, but this is a long-term game. I'm gonna stick to it.
Yeah, if you look back at the history, like every city has had its time in the sun, and eventually, it gets back to that time in the sun. So it's not, one market always going up or down. Every place has its own cycle that eventually it catches up. It's called reversion to the mean. So eventually it does pick up in relation to all the other markets. And the other aspect there is the risks. So you need to know the risks involved, So for instance, if the risk is the property values might go down in this area. Okay. So you got to ask yourself, like, how would you mitigate this risk? Is it a mining town wherein, it may never go back up? Yeah, that's a big risk. I'm not willing to take that. So I'll strike that up. But is it a town that's, full of people? It will eventually catch up again. Okay, that's something I could look at. So the other thing you could look at is the yield that you require. Will this property cost you a lot to hold? That's a risk. It may cost you a lot. The interest rates may go up. So I bought the properties I've purchased have always had 6% rental yields at the start, because I've been looking forward, not looking forward to, but I've been I knew that at some point the interest rates will go up.
Yep.
So I need to insulate myself against that. So that's the risk, and that's how you mitigate it. So the risk might be bad tenants. Well, you need to get your landlord insurance. You need to get a good property manager and buy in a pocket that has more owner occupiers.
Yeah.
Things like that. There's always a reason not to invest, but I feel like if you just do your risk analysis and mitigate it, and just do something and get in.
Absolutely. It's one of those games, like a lot of things that you can do, and it's important to invest in your knowledge. There's no question about it. But there's no greater learning than actually doing it, because that's when you're at the coalface, that's when you find out. Once you got your first property in Queensland, talk us through where to from there. And what I'd particularly be interested in is if you could unpack what your criteria for, you've mentioned the 6% yield, what other criteria and the percentage of owner occupiers, what are the key things that you are looking for at that stage, and did it change over time as you added to your portfolio in terms of the things that a property had to have before you were prepared to look at it seriously? Yeah.
So firstly, I would like to touch on a point that I missed over there. So with my first property that I purchased, I was I used my finances smartly. So I'd saved up enough deposit for one property.
Yep.
And instead of using all my finances as a deposit to buy in Crestmead, I used a parental guarantee. So my mom already had a lot of equity in her investment property in Sydney. So she guaranteed me 20%. So that way I didn't have to pay any LMI or put down my own funds in that. And look, I'm not talking about, using it to buy crypto here. We're buying property in a place where, people want to live. So, it was a safe decision, and my mom was happy to help me out with that. So once I did that, I had my own deposit to then buy a second property, which I bought right away. So I bought those two properties within a span of 2 months, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of the second property, then I wanted to diversify. I didn't want to buy in the same place. My second criteria was I wanted to buy in a city that hasn't already boomed. I don't know why, but I had these ideas that, okay, catch the next one, not the train that's already gone, the next train, kind of a thing. So I looked at Adelaide, and from everyone who I'd spoken to, they said, "Why are you buying here?" No offense to people in Adelaide, but
I'm an Adelaidean, by the way, Andy, so it's okay. Yeah.
I do love Adelaide. I've been there, and it's a beautiful little town. Actually, people call it a little town, but I really like it there. But so I bought in a suburb called Smithfield. Now, if you know, this is in the Elizabeth. Yeah. So this was very close, not very close, but in the vicinity of the Holden plant, which was at that time shutting down. And there was so much hysteria about, it's just going to go down. Adelaide is just not going to go up again or whatever. But I didn't buy into that. I spoke to people who had invested there. And the reason I looked at it, the criteria, was I got a yield of 7.5% straight up. Okay. The buy-in prices, the price that I bought for was 185,000. Okay. And this was a massive block of 700 square meters. I did my research and I found a good pocket where, I aligned with someone on the ground, a property manager who knew the area well. And so he pointed me to this little pocket where you only had owner-occupied properties. So one of the things he told me was look for a street where the houses are not subdivided. You don't have too many semis. So that was one way of, telling which one's a good street or not. But so I got that high yield of 7.5%. I got into a city that hadn't yet boomed, house on land rather than apartment. And it was next to suburbs that were more expensive. So I didn't buy in the most expensive suburb in that pocket, one that was slightly more affordable. So it had more room to catch up with the other suburbs. So that was my thinking there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And has it performed that way? How's it performed?
Yeah, I actually got to that. Yep. So when I bought it was 185,000. You would struggle to find anything under around 350,000 now in that same area. Yep. And when I purchased, the rental yields was 7.2% or thereabouts. And right now it's around 11.5%. So it has been one of the best performers for me. Like, not in dollar terms, it doesn't sound like too much money, but look, it cost me around 35,000 to buy that property. That's all it cost me, and it's paying for itself. And now it's even, putting more money in my pocket. So it's a win.
I love it. Okay, so with the success of Smithfield under the belt, what was the next step? And talk to me about how did your investment strategy change at all as you went through this process? Was there an evolution in your thinking around it?
Yeah, so I did. So after buying the second property, we took a bit of a break and did, personal things like settling down, all those kind of things. And then around COVID time, when property was back in the news and we were kind of done with our home and all of that, we looked at property again. And this time I came across a person named PK Gupta. And initially I was very suspicious about, because there's a lot of gurus out there and property is largely, unregulated, where anyone can give you advice. So I watched some of his videos and I saw he came across a bit genuine to me. And I just dived in and I did his course, and it actually gave me a system. So there were not too many, there were actually a few things that I already had right, that I was already doing right, but it clarified the whole process and removed the analysis paralysis that I would normally go through as someone who analyzes things a lot. So gave me a bit more direction in the sense now my philosophy has changed. Previously, it would be buy what you can afford when you can afford. So you need to be able to afford to not just buy it, but hold it as well.
Exactly. Cash flowing. Yeah.
But now it's not just buy what you can afford when you can afford, but also in the right market that's ripe to grow. So there's an underlying demand and supply that I learned to, to read a bit more.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I know PK is a great data guy. Yeah. Are there any particular data sources that have really driven your decision making since then? You're happy to share with us?
Yeah. So I do use a few different data sources. Like DSR data, we use a lot of that. There's a lot of information available on the census website and the ABS website. SQM is a great one, which shows you, vacancy rates, things like that. Apart from that, just realestate.com. Previously, realestate.com used to have a heat map that showed you which suburbs.
It did. Yeah, I enjoyed that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and they got rid of that now, but that's a good one to, realestate.com is a good one. And I always like to check out, which properties have been sitting on the market for long. That's a little trick I use. I rearrange the order on realestate.com.
Yes,
and
so do I. Yeah, I do the same.
Which properties have been sitting on the market for long, and I try and get in on those properties and put my bid in, kind of thing. Yeah.
Love it. So you, once you took the break, can you talk to us about what properties, where, and why? Post COVID.
So after doing PK's course, I had a bit of clarity, and the clear winners in terms of demand and supply at that time were Western Australia and Queensland, but not just Brisbane, other parts of Queensland too. So I, looking at all the data metrics, they were all lining up. The demand was there from a point of, I purchased the first property. I looked at that time, a lot of people, Rockingham is a bit of a hotspot right now where every man and his dog are jumping in. But it was back then as well, but it was just starting out. But I looked LGA further out. I looked at the Mandurah region further south, and I looked at a suburb called Hall's Head, and I saw there was less competition there. And I managed to purchase a property for 390,000. Now this property is a 700 square meter block, 4-bedroom, but it is 800 meters from the water. Yeah. And that's amazing value. You could never, Eastern states, people from Eastern states would really know what I mean. Such good value. And it rents out for 500. Actually, last week I had the rents go up a bit. So it's 500 on a purchase price of 390. That's 6.4% yield. Wow. Right from the start. And if you look at that suburb now, you wouldn't find a 4-bedroom for less than 550,000.
Yeah.
And this is a little over a year later. So I bought that in Feb 2022, last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your portfolio as it stands, with any other purchases over that one?
Oh, yeah. So after buying that property, I was a bit confident on the data, and since I'd already pulled out a lot of equity, so we had our home refinanced, and we had a bit of equity sitting there, which we used then as a deposit to buy another property in Perth in the suburb called Huntingdale. So I bought a 3-bedder, but it's got a lot of different living spaces that can be converted into another bedroom.
Yep.
And this one's in a suburb called Huntingdale, which is 20 kilometers from the city. It's not it's not a flash, area, but it's just good value. I bought that for 362,000.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been the best performer, but right now the way the Perth market is heating up.
Early days, very early days yet. Andy, so the very smart purchases there. Yeah. So if you summed up your investment strategy now in terms of what is your strategy, where's it going to get you to, and therefore what type of property strategy and financing strategy you're adopting that's going to get you there?
My strategy has been more of a buy and hold strategy. I haven't been an active in developing or doing too much to the property, because I focus on other things, just with my baby and with our family and things like that, spending time with our family and also helping clients, those kind of things. So I haven't had the time to be active with my investments. But in future, I do plan to, look into starting, developing a little bit, maybe starting with some subdivision, because the blocks that I purchased all have the potential. So yeah, I haven't thought too much into the rest of it as yet, because I'm still increasing my asset base. So I've still got equity and borrowing capacity to buy more properties with land.
Right, I think you make a really good point there, because I often say to people, what you invest in and how you invest should align with the amount of time that you can dedicate to not only the initial exercise, but the ongoing process. So if you don't have much time, then taking on a property development, for example, would be high risk, because if you don't have the time and you're then having to find the time, that's when you make mistakes. And, I've often said, Andy, that, if you're going to invest, you shouldn't be creating a second job when you do it. Part of investing is to actually give you time back ultimately down the track, so you can put that energy into things that are really important to you, like your family and your friends. So I think you make a really good point there. Now, sort of jumping to the future, then I'd love for you to share and perhaps paint a bit of a word picture for us of your life vision and what your ideal lifestyle looks like.
A bit of a cliched answer here, but I think I'm really happy with where our lives are at the moment. Having grown up in Dubai and lived in Asia, I feel like we are so lucky here in Australia to have these opportunities that we do. And I'm just really thankful for the way my life is right now. And in future, I do see myself someday cashing out of Sydney and moving to a regional town somewhere. So buying something half the price, wherever that may be, and sort of selling our investment properties, paying off the loan, and whatever's left over, probably, buying some ETFs or some, vanilla shares that just pay dividends. And I don't see myself completely retiring, because I just like what I'm doing. So I'd probably still be working, but I think it'll just be such a bit of a flexibility, maybe work overseas for a few months, that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And in terms of where your portfolio is at and where it's projected to be, do you have a sense of the sort of size of asset base that you are going to need to create to generate that lifestyle?
Yeah, so I'm looking at an asset base of 4 million is what I'm aiming to have at the moment. Yep. So we're working towards that, and we're getting there. But then we do have to sort of cash out and pay off the existing debt. But the good thing about sort of most bad things with inflation, but the couple of good things is that the loan size doesn't go up. It stays the same. So
yeah, exactly. No, exactly. No, I love that, mate. That's I really appreciate you sharing that. If you look back so far, and this is not just related to property, but what's been your best and your worst investment, and what have you learned from each of those?
I think the best investment, not just property, but just investing in educating myself, to be honest, the time that I invested in it. At the time, I didn't really think that I didn't start with a big goal. I started small, but just having the time to read and understand what's involved in it. That way, now when I speak to, you may go to a professional, a mortgage broker or whoever, but you need to be across what you're getting into, because it's a 30-year loan. You're buying a high value, high price asset. You need to know what you're getting into more than others. Even if you get a buyer's agent, the buyer's agent will find you a property in a particular area, but you need to decide if you want to buy in that particular area first. Yes. So I think the saying that no one cares about you more than yourself. That's an important thing. So I've spent my time educating myself so that I can eventually have more time to spend with family.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, given the journey that you've gone on, and you're now through your broking business helping other investors on their journeys, what do you believe are the keys to successful investment, and why? Then, Andy?
Well, the key to successful investment, I would say, is firstly to take a step and actually invest, because oftentimes we get bogged down with all the details and all the information available, and we just don't make a move. I think we're also I've been brought up, to think that loans are bad. You should not owe money to anyone. And while that's good in some senses, but when it comes to investing, leveraging is actually your friend. So there's a good debt and a bad debt. So if you leverage and you buy a car, you're buying something that's going down in value.
Yep.
But if you're buying a house, something that people need to live in, that's good debt. So I don't think it's something to be afraid of. It's something that we need to understand the risks and mitigate the risks. But it's important to take action.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, if you look at the qualities and character traits that separate great investors from the rest, but what are they as you've experienced so far?
I would say great investors have a system.
Yeah.
And they've developed this system, through their own experiences or through, people that they've learned from.
Yeah.
But they take the action and they kind of, I'm sorry.
No, that's good. No, you're absolutely spot on, mate. And it's good to take the time to reflect, and because you've had the experience yourself, you've seen a lot of others that are going through the process. You've mentioned a couple of times during our discussion the analysis paralysis exercise, and that can be very dangerous because if you're risk averse and you're conservative and you're looking for an excuse not to do anything, if you do enough analysis, you'll talk yourself out of everything. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Yes, you've got to use data. You've got to use the right data, but ultimately you've got to take some action. And just as you've said a couple of times during the discussion so far, I sense that you're almost a little bit of a contrarian, and I think most of the successful investors in the world are contrarians. They're swimming against the tide. They're seeing things that the masses aren't. Warren Buffett is a classic contrarian, and he's got 1,000 quotes around that very subject. So I think you've summed up that up really well. But if you reflect back now on your journey so far, then Andy, if you were starting out again, would you invest any differently?
If I was starting out again, I think I would go a bit harder. I think everyone who looks back and they always think that, oh, I should have bought some more. So I feel like I'm naturally a safe player. So I played it a bit too safe. One of my regrets was when I bought my second property in Adelaide, I was looking at Hobart at the same time back in 2017, and I didn't end up buying there because I thought it was an island and it's better to be on the mainland in Adelaide. It wasn't based in any data or anything else, but just my fear. So I feel like if I'd gone a bit harder then, I would be a little bit ahead in my journey. But overall, I feel I'm in a good place, and taking action has been the best thing. And investing in property, I mean, I got my wife, who's even more conservative than me, but I remember the way I got her on board was she asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I asked her for a couple of investing books. So she got the Barefoot Investor is what I asked her to get me, and she read it before she gave it to me. And then when she handed it to me, she was like, "By the way, you should read this book. It's really good. What are we going to do now?" kind of a thing. So she was really on board. I feel like, that's a good way to get family on board as well.
And that another really important point there, I think, Andy, because you would talk to a lot of mum and dad investors, I'm sure, and I don't know about you, but in the years that I've been assisting investors in that regard, unless both parties are on the same page, it invariably ends in tears. So it's really important, I think, for both partners to at least have one party might be much more into it and go to a lot more depth than the other. But if you're not having the conversations around what it means, where it's leading to, and at least having that basic information and understanding, that's often where some of the self-sabotaging can occur. So another brilliant point there. So, and that's a nice sort of segue, because what I'd love to do now, Andy, is dive more into the financing exercise and how important finance is to your success in property. And to sort of set the scene for that, what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen that people make around borrowing money to invest in property?
Most people look at, they're swayed by things like depreciation benefits, but they don't see the big picture, as in you're buying an asset, an overpriced asset. Like the other houses in the same suburb might cost a couple of $100,000 less than what you're paying, but you're buying it because it has depreciation benefits of $50,000 over its life. So people don't see the entire picture, and they're lured by some of these things. So it means that they take out a massive debt for an asset that over the long term probably is okay, but has not done anything great. It hasn't grown as much as you could have. And then you've used all your borrowing capacity on one asset, rather than diversifying into different markets that could have grown a lot more. And in investing, it's always good to diversify your risk as well.
100%. Any other common mistakes that you see people making around particularly the financing aspect?
Well, there are different tiers of lenders, and people are sometimes stuck with just the big four, and they think that they can't borrow anymore. They're too afraid to go with the other lenders. Yes, some of the smaller lenders right now, their interest rates are high, and borrowers probably they're stuck on interest rates more than anything else. But the borrowing capacity is also important, because the interest rates will change over the next year. The next few years, it'll go up, down, sideways. But it's enabling you to buy an asset right now. If you're able to buy an asset over the long term, the rents will go up as well. So don't focus so much on just the interest rates. Look at the overall package of how much you can borrow and what you can do with that. So what we do at On Fire Finance is also give people a bit of a plan, in the sense, you can buy a property worth, say, 500,000, but you need to try and target a rental yield of so and so. So 500, say, so you can keep buying the next one, and you can manage to hold it. That sort of a thing. So people don't put that thought into the entire process.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I've you're absolutely right. For some reason, that whether it be home buyers or investors, they focus on rate. And I often say it's not rate, it's reach that's important, because as you would know better than I, there's about a 55% variation across the different banks and lenders in terms of how much you borrow. Now, that's the difference between being able to get a loan for 500,000 and 750,000. And in terms of the asset base, if you're securing a $800,000 property versus a $550,000 property, and they both grow at similar rates over the long term, you're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in front in terms of your nest egg at the end of the journey. So 100% agree with you there. It's focus on capacity. Your biggest asset as a borrower is the capacity. So don't get suckered into going for the rate or the safety of the big four. There's 40 odd lenders out there, and they all have very different ways of looking at borrowing capacity. The question that investors all need to be asking their brokers or the banks is, how much can I borrow? Because investment debt's tax deductible. So the difference, and if we're only talking, a few small percentage points in relation to the rate, then the capacity has a much bigger impact, Andy. So you make a really important point in that regard.
Yeah.
Just around that, because you'll be seeing this, I'm sure, at the moment, because with the rapid rise in rates, and rules of thumb, for every 1% increase in the rate, it reduces how much you can borrow on it for an average borrower around about $100,000. So we've seen 3.75% increase in rates. There's 375 grand less that the average borrower can get their hands on. What suggestions would you be making to potential investors at the moment in relation to optimizing their borrowing capacity and overcoming that growing hurdle, actually?
Yeah, I would say, at the end, it comes down to your income and expenses. So if you're already an investor, have you checked your existing rents? Is there any room to increase that? There are also so the way lenders look at your expenses is there's something called household expenditure measure. So each lender has a different level of household expenditure measure. And there are some expenses such as private health insurance, private school fees, strata. These expenses are added on top of the household expenditure measure. So for instance, if a lender's HEM is 4,000, but you spend only your household expenditure per month is only 2,000, but you have private health insurance, private school fees of another, 500, they're going to consider your expense to be 4,500 because they just take the minimum HEM plus they add all these extra expenses on. So reducing your credit cards, those are big ones. And I would also like to add that from the 1st of June, the HEX debts are going to increase by 7% this year.
Wow.
So they don't charge you interest on HEX, but it's adjusted based on the inflation. So for this year, it's 7%. So if anyone has a HEX debt there, maybe, if you're able to do consider paying it off. If you're looking to get a home loan, because this also, reduces your borrowing capacity. But it all comes together. So speak to a good mortgage broker and get a good idea of the entire picture of what's hindering you. But I would like to add to your listeners that property investing is for everyone. So it's not that you need the biggest amount of money to get into it. As I did myself, I just found a market where I could afford to buy. But I did my research. I was still a bit, I had my requirements, but I bought interstate, or I used family guarantee if that's available to you. Not available to everyone, but there are ways you can still do it without having to eat 2-minute noodles.
Yeah, spot on. That's a really good advice there. Now, something that I've seen is really inhibiting a lot of ongoing property purchase, whether it's owner-occupiers or investors at the moment, is the 3% servicing buffer that APRA has imposed on all the banks. And while I acknowledge that it's really relevant when the cash rate was down at 0.1%, now that we've got rates back to where around where the long-term average is, what's your thoughts on the 3% and the appropriateness of the 3% servicing buffer and the impact that this is having on investors' capacity?
Yeah, so it was appropriate at the time because interest rates were so low and the market was really red hot inflated. But right now, as everyone knows, it's too high. So if the actual interest rate is 5% or 6%, for example, the lenders actually assess your borrowing ability at 9%. So there's not a lot you can buy at that rate. But some relief for refinances at the moment. Lenders are in talks with APRA to be able to refinance home loans and investment loans like for like, and they will reduce the buffer from 3% to 1%. Just for like refinance. So St. George has come out now and Westpac have come out and reduced their buffer rate to 1%. Resimac has also reduced theirs. So there are some options available, and hopefully other lenders will come on board as well. And if you're stuck in a tight situation and can't afford it, you might be able to refinance. But if you are stuck in that situation that's really tight, then it's not going to reduce anytime. The rates themselves are not going to reduce right now. So make sure you can at least hold on for a year.
Yeah, 100%. No, really, really good advice. And another good reason for listeners to be reaching out to a good investment savvy mortgage broker like yourself, because it's a moving feast when it comes to the way lenders approach it. It's not a set and concrete exercise. Banks are changing their policies almost every week. So well worth asking the question. Sort of coming back to the investment exercise to round off the conversation on this, Andy, where do you think people need to start with investing, and what are the initial steps they need to take if they're sitting here listening going, yeah, I need to be doing something in the investment space? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I guess the first step with investing is knowing what you can afford to buy. So there's two things to that. What can you afford to borrow, and what can you afford to hold? So on my website, I have a little investment forecasting tool that I use personally. So, you can put in all your expense income, and it shows you if you bought a property worth 500,000 and, a rental yield of 5%, how many properties can you afford to hold at the end of the day? Would you go in negative, or would you have any cash left over? So those two things. Speak to someone who can give you a bit of a plan and help you maximize, what you can actually achieve with your current financial situation. So not just the one property, but the end goal and how you can get there. Someone who'll work with you on that. I feel like that's a good start. Then researching areas, there's so much data available right now, and it's only going to increase the data-driven approach to property investing. Reach out to, there's people like PK Gupta, who I've personally had great experience with. Speak to people who have done what you're looking to do, and don't get stuck on fixed ideas such as, I just need to buy in Sydney.
Exactly. Yeah, taking that borderless approach from a diversification perspective, but an opportunity perspective is a really good one. Great thoughts there, Andy. Now, I'd like to sort of shift into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush fast four, Andy, or the bushfire lightning round, where I ask you the four questions. I give you a blindfold and a cigarette, and we jump in. So to kick that off, what's your favourite quote and why?
Right. So someone once told me, like, if you want something really bad, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. That's one that someone told me a while back, and it's quite true. I feel like sometimes you don't want the things you don't want to do, but and you subconsciously put it off, and then you say, oh, I was just too busy, or I just didn't get the time. But really, if you wanted to, you would. So I find that a quote that's true.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Moving into the literary field, and you've mentioned a couple of books during our discussion already, but what's the top book that you'd recommend we read and why?
I think the Richest Man in Babylon, which was the first little book that I read. It's not really that big a book. You could probably find the PDF online. It's such an old one, though. It's an interesting read, and it's more of a mindset change that it leaves you with. And as I'd mentioned, like, it's not, trying to save money and changing your financial habits. It can't be like a diet. You can't just force it on yourself and go hard. It needs to be a mindset change. So reading something like that might help you with it. If you have problems saving money, I feel like The Barefoot Investor has some good advice. Some of it is, he's very anti-property.
I was going to say, yeah, my only criticism, I've read the book myself, got a copy, but my only criticism there is that because Scott Pape is a financial planner and financial advisor, and therefore can't talk about property, he actually poo-poos property. But my own belief is you need to have a diversified portfolio across property, shares, super, the whole exercise. So yeah, the only negative out of that exercise, I think, is that he probably is slightly a bit too negative on the property side. Yeah. But there are some, as you say, some really good savings fundamentals in that book in terms of getting into good money habits. So I think that side of it, and having the open conversations around the kitchen table and whatnot, there's some really, really good money habit stuff in that exercise. That's really good tip on that. Yeah,
I
go
would
on.
actually like to say, like, I'm not property investing. I think is really safe, and I mean, as I mentioned before, my exit plan would involve investing in some vanilla shares because you don't have to deal with people too much, so a little less headaches there. But property is the best vehicle to use other people's money to invest. You can leverage safely and buy property, and the bank's not going to chase you for their money back, as long as you keep making the repayments. You're good. So that's a very safe, unlike shares. If you try and leverage into shares, the value of the shares go down, you're going to get a call, and
Margin
that's going to be
call.
really margin call. That's going to be really quick, and they're going to sell off your shares. So that's one of the main reasons why I favor property as an investment vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good advice. And I mean, I've been there. I've had a margin call. I used to trade CFDs before I got into property many years ago, and that was a very scary roller coaster ride. And I've done some numbers on this, Andy. In terms of bang for buck, property will potentially give you 3.5 times the equity and asset base opportunity that you'll get in shares, even on a lower growth rate. Because you're using the bank's money to do it. And here's a really important point, I think, that people need to think about. And that is the fact that banks will still lend 90 to 95% of the value of a property. And let's face it, banks are into making big profits, not just, and then they're never into losing money. The fact that the banks see property as a safe haven in that context is a pretty good indicator that it's a pretty good place to be putting your money. So versus a margin loan, which might be 50 or 60% of the value of the shares, or from a risk perspective and a risk management perspective, it's giving you a pretty clear sign that property is a pretty safe place to be putting your hard-earned coin. So that's great. Now, next question on this one is, well, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received, Andy?
The worst would probably be from my mom to buy a 2-bedroom apartment in Maryland's. I'm glad I didn't do that. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
The best advice was from someone on a property forum, and she said, buy what you can afford when you can afford. And don't take it in the literal sense, as in, buy whatever. Do some more research, but, when you can afford, as in we always look back and we think that, oh, I should have bought back then. Like, even now that the rates have gone up, I'll tell you, I probably can't qualify to buy the last property that I did. If I try to buy it again, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm glad I did back then. So that's why,
That's great advice. I've been saying for a long time now, it's never a matter of when, because the best time is every time you can afford to. And when I say afford, it's not the purchase price, it's the ongoing holding cost. That's the important piece there that you already reinforced earlier. But it's always about what and where. So because time, as you and I both know, time is the biggest shifter on top of compounding that has an impact on the outcome for property. So I'm certainly a big advocate of that. Final question in the Ambush series. What's a personal habit that you employ that's contributed most to your investment success today?
Personal habit that's helped me. I think I just have an addictive personality, to be honest. So once I started reading about property, I just kind of jumped into it and just kept reading. Like, to a point, my wife was, a bit like, oh, why is he researching property? She didn't want to talk to me about property anymore. The last 2 properties, when I was looking to buy them, I would be like, oh, check this one out, check this one out at the dinner table, and she was so sick of me. So that's a bit of a personality trait that helps and also hinders sometimes.
I'm right with you there. I call it property porn, basically, because my free time, I'm sitting there scrolling through realestate.com or domain.com and just constantly looking at properties, and it becomes it's sort of a healthy addiction, but it's a fun addiction anyway. But I understand exactly what you're saying there. No, awesome, mate. Look, I really enjoyed our great conversation today. As we sort of bring it to a close, what are your key takeaways and actions that aspiring investors need to take, Andy?
I'd like to just say that, do your research and take action. Don't be bogged down, into over-analysis. There are so many options available. Time will heal most things. So just, take some action.
Love it. Absolutely beautifully said. Okay, well, for those in the audience that have really resonated with your message today, Andy, how can listeners find out more and get involved with you and perhaps tap into the property investment forecasting tool that you spoke about earlier?
Yeah, so you can check it out on my website, onfirefinance.com.au, or you can look me up on Instagram. I'm trying to be a bit more active. Andy Fernandes on Instagram, or you'd find my details on my website. Get in touch if you would like to have a chat and see what's possible with your current financial situation.
Awesome, Andy. Look, really enjoyed our chat, mate. I think this will be the start of many more. So I'm really keen to keep the conversation going, and I want to thank you for being so generous with your time on the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Bushy.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. And don't leave yet until you've taken the next step towards living by design by getting my award-winning book, Get Invested, absolutely free when you sign up at knowhowproperty.com.au or bushymartin.com.au. And finally, make sure you subscribe to Property Hub to get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's leading property show for red-hot property investing news and insights, direct from industry leaders and influencers. Remember to always get invested in your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you next time.